It's interesting to think of a conveyor belt of players that came out of Spain, but Moya was a little bit different. Moya was the first one who really embraced playing on hard courts. Yes, clay was his best surface, and the one major that he won was Roland Garros. But he was a runner-up at the Australian Open a full 16 months before he won at Roland Garros. He was also the first player from the island of Mallorca to make it to the top. And in many ways, he paved the way for Nadal. One of the odd things about Moya is that if we look at today's tennis equipment, the racket market is dominated by three companies, Wilson, Head, and Babolat. Babolat have existed as a company since the 1870s, but they weren't into rackets. They didn't produce their first racket until 1994. And here was this promising young Spaniard, Carlos Moya, who ran with that racket. Now, had he not had the success that he had, who knows whether Nadal would have played with that racket and whether it would have had the prominence that it has today as a racket brand. Now, you could say, well, he was amply rewarded, and no doubt he was. But the fact is, he took a gamble on a brand new form of the basic tennis tool. The racket is the basic tennis tool. And he ran with that. It clearly worked for him. He got to the Australian Open final when the racket itself had only been conceived 2.5 years earlier. He was a Grand Slam champion a year and a half after that. He got to world number one, albeit for a very short time, but anybody who gets to world number one, it's a phenomenal achievement. He was a loyal servant of the Spanish Davis Cup team. In fact, he was devastated to have missed out on Spain's first ever Davis Cup triumph in 2000 because he was injured for much of that year. And that's why when he led Spain, he really did lead Spain to its first Davis Cup, or its second Davis Cup title, but his first title back in 2004, where he and Nadal were the singles players in the final. That was the triumph for him that I think meant so much to him as a person, playing for Spain alongside his fellow Mallorcan. And he is one of the greats of Spanish tennis, and that alone makes him worthy of consideration for induction into the International Tennis Hall of Fame.